Okay, in this screencast we're going to look at creating forms for our database. Now this screencast is for both years 12 and years 13. I'm going to use the year 12 database as the example, but year 13, yours is the exact same process, but just in the context of your own individual databases. So if we go into the year 12 database, you can see from my screen I've got various forms here that I've created so far. But the first one that you're going to start with is the switchboard. Now the switchboard is like the home page, it's the main part of the database. So when the database is loaded, this is the page or the screen that appears. So it has to have the links to all the different parts of the database, and you can see in this example for CT Productions, customer management, payment reminders, checking availability of bookings, adding a new production, production schedule. Again with year 13, for example, with my year 13 example that I did, the sports shop, you would have links to customers, you'd have links to staff, you'd have links to stock, links to orders. Okay, so you can put this into the context of your own databases. Now there's two different ways of creating forms. If we have a look at the create menu, we can create either a blank form, okay, or if we open up a table, we can get access to automatically create a form based on that table for us. We're going to start with form switchboard, okay, and we're just going to create a blank form for this one. So if we click on blank form, okay, there it is. Now I want you to save this one as form switchboard, okay, so FRMS, all in capital letters, and then witchboard. I'm going to put a number 2 on the end of mine because I've already got form switchboard and I can't have two forms with the same file name. It's important that you do call it FRM switchboard. I'm going to give you some code so you can have users log in and out of your database, and in the code the form name is FRMS capitals witchboard. So to make the two marry up, it doesn't matter if you name it something else, we can change that in the code, but just to make it as simple as it can be, that's what I've used. So there's form switchboard, click on OK, and that's my blank form created. I'm now going to create another form. This form will be for the productions table. So if we have a look at this one, so far we've been working with our databases in either datasheet view or design view. Now when your database is live, as it were, and it's being used in the real working world, users wouldn't use this view in the database because there's too much opportunity for confusion, for errors, for people to make mistakes. So we want to create them nice, simple forms which are easy to use, which make it easy for them to enter data, sort data, work with data, and ultimately minimize the amount of mistakes that they can make. So to create my data entry form, I've opened up the table I wish to create the form for. I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to choose form, and there it is. Now this is just a generic form that Access creates for us. Okay, we are lacking certain functionality. For example, we can't add a record, we can't print a record, we can't save a record, edit a record, and we can't work our way home, next, previous, first and last record with this form either. So we need to change the design. So if we right click and go into design view, you might want to make some additional space. Okay, so I can pull the form over to the right hand side, and the form footer, using the top of the form, I can pull it down there to make some space at the bottom. Now you can either choose really where you put your navigation. You can either have your navigation and buttons at the bottom, or your navigations and home button, etc. Over here on the right hand side. Whichever you choose, it doesn't matter, but keep it consistent through all the forms within your database. So if you are going to put them up here on the right hand side, which is where I'll put mine, then make sure that every form you create, the navigation is up here on the right hand side. It just helps it make it easier for the end user, and it keeps consistency. What we don't want to be doing is opening one form, adding a record for productions, for example, and having our navigation and save buttons over here. Then we go and open another form to add a new performer, and everything's moved and it's down here. It just gets a little bit confusing. It's a little bit Mickey Mouse. So keep it all in one place. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a button that's going to take me from this form back to my switchboard. Okay, so I'm going to use the button, which is this one here. Okay, click on it, and I'm going to draw where I want the button to be. I've now got the option to choose from various options. I've got record navigation, record operations, and form operations. Now for this one, I want to open a form, so I want to open up form switchboard 2. So if I choose open form, click on next, okay, and I've got a list here now of everything in my database. So this is why the naming convention that we use for forms, for tables, etc. Makes it easier for us. So I can see form switchboard 2, click on next. Now you can choose either a picture, okay, you can assign a custom image to that picture, or you can go for text. I'm going to go for text because the problem with pictures are, if you know what that picture means, that's fine, you can use the system, and in software like Microsoft Suite, for example, so Office, PowerPoint, Access, Excel, they use standard pictures, so the save icon, the open file icon, you know the types of icons. So if you know what save is in Word, you know what save is in Access, you know what save is in Excel, and so on. But just for simplicity, I'm going to go with text. Click on next, but I don't want to call it open form, I want to call it home. Okay, so I'll call that home, click on next. Command 26. Now if you need to add code to this button later on, this is the name of the button that you'll be looking for. So command 26 is quite meaningless, so you can use your own naming convention. I'm going to say FRM, and we'll call it productions. Okay, so I know now when I'm looking in code that this button is BTN, sorry, form productions, so I know exactly what it is. I'll click on finish, and there's my button. So if I switch to form view, when I click on home, it takes me back to switchboard 2. So now we need to do a little bit of work on the switchboard. So we'll start by creating a button that takes us from the switchboard back to the productions form. So if we go back to design view, let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, just make it as big as your screen, and then you can always resize it later. Now we're also going to need to add some labels. What we don't want is lots of buttons scattered all over the place. It's going to look messy. So we're going to use some labels to give our switchboard some structure. So if I put a label in there, and we'll call this one productions. Okay, so all the buttons that I'm going to create to do with productions will go under here. I'll create another label called customers, maybe put that over here, all the buttons to do with customers there, and so on. So it's neat, it's organised, and it's easy for people to use. So exactly the same process as we've just done with a table productions. Okay, so we're going to use the button. We'll draw the button. It doesn't matter what size you make the button because Access will resize it for you. Just note how big that is. So we're looking for form operations, open a form, click on next, and we're looking for form switchboard 2. No, we're not. We're looking for form, well, table productions I've called it. So it's there. Table productions. So I've forgotten my own naming convention now, so I should have called that FRM productions. So this is looking a little bit messy now because it's not quite clear which form I'm linking to, and as I said previously, if you don't use a good naming convention, so QRY for queries, RPT for reports, etc., TBL for tables, it does start to get messy. So very, very quickly, I'm just going to cancel out of this. I'm going to close down the table productions form, and I'm going to rename it. So I do want to save the changes. I haven't saved it, that's why. So we'll call that FRM productions. Okay, so I've already got that one, so I'm going to pop a 2 on the end and save it there. Okay, so I'll get rid of this button so I can start the process again. So back to the button. As I was saying, it doesn't matter how big you draw the button because Access will resize it. Form operations, open a form, click on next, and I'm looking for form productions 2. So if I click on next, okay, and I want to open the form to show all of the records. Okay, we'll have a look at this option afterwards. So I'll click on next. This is going to be a text button again, and we'll call this productions. Okay, click on next. I'm going to call this BTN switch productions, and click on finish. Now you can see that Access has resized the button for me. So when I pop it into Form View, click on Productions, and it takes me to Form Productions 2. So this is how you're going to build up your forms, by creating a form that you know you need from a table, okay, like I did with Form Productions, linking it back to the switchboard, okay, and then linking it from the switchboard, or creating a button from the switchboard, should I say, back to that form. So now I can click on Productions, and I go to Productions, click on Home, and I go back to the switchboard. As I mentioned earlier, the form here is lacking some functionality. So if we go back to Design View, we can start adding some additional buttons that we're going to need. Okay, so the process is exactly the same. All you change is the type of button that you add and the text label that you give it. So on this form, we're going to need to be able to save a record, print a record, delete a record, and we're going to need navigation to take us to the first record, the last record, the previous record, and the next record. Similar sort of thing that you've done in PowerPoints at GCSE. Okay, so it's that first page, last page, previous and next, but with records. So using the button, there he is, we'll create another button. Okay, we've got record navigation, so here's my find record, go to the first record, go to the last record, previous and next. We've got record operations, where I can add a new record, delete a record, duplicate a record, print a record, and save a record. And we've also got the form operations there as well. We've got report operations, so for example, you can open a report. We've got applications, so that will quit the switchboard, and miscellaneous as well, okay, where we can run queries or macros. But for now, we're just going to focus on the basic functionality for the navigation and the form operations. But for now, I'm going to create a button that creates a new record. So it's a record operation. I want to add new record, click on next. I'm going to go with text because, as I say, these pictures, if you don't know what they mean, they can be confusing. So add record text, it says what it does. There is no confusion, or there shouldn't be. Click on next, we'll give it a button. So we'll say BTN, button for productions. And that is new, and click on finish. There we are. So I've got a button now to add a new record. So if we jump quickly into form view, okay, down here at the bottom of the screen, you can just see I'm on record 1 of 11. If I click add records, I'm now on record 12 of 12. So you can see it's created a new record for me, and the data set is blank as well. Okay, so not only do I need to add a record, I need to save a record, print a record, and add some navigation, as we've just discussed. Okay, so I'm not going to keep going through the process of making all these buttons. Okay, basically in Design View, you use the button, you draw the button, and you create the button type that you want. But let's have a look at one I did earlier. Okay, again, you can see the form. This is an embedded form, and I'll show you how to do this afterwards. But for now, we just want to look at the buttons I've created. Add a new customer, save the customer details, print the customer record, find customer. Then I've got my first record, so record 1 of 7, my last record, record 7 of 7 if you notice the jump, and I can move 6, 5, 4 and so on between them. Notice that the data here links up to the customer as well, so we can see that the BBC, Mr Tony Hall, has booked Peter Pan in Birmingham and Greece in Birmingham. And finally, I've got my home button, so when I click on it, it takes me back to my original switchboard. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is create your switchboard. Okay, create your first form, link your form back to your switchboard, and then link your switchboard back over to your form. Okay, one final thing, I'm going to do this very, very quickly because I've got about 40 seconds of recording time left. You're going to need to create a form for every part of the database where you need to enter or work with data. So if we work through this very quickly, productions table, yes. Okay, table roles, yes. Production type, yes. Customers, you're going to add new customers, yes. Okay, so the majority of tables, performers table, you're going to add new performers, so yes. Titles table, not very often you'd use that, but you will need to. Production schedule, certainly. So work your way through your tables thinking, how am I going to work with data? How is CT Productions going to work with data? Do I need a form? And create a form. I'm going to produce another screencast in a minute on the exact forms that you will need. Okay, have a go.